Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope you're all doing great today. So we are approaching Christmas. Hopefully you guys got all your gifts made and prepared, or you're going to be finishing them up in the next couple days. I know it's about wrapping time for me, so I think I got most of the things. There's a couple that I forgot, but you forget things, and there's always the last minute rush. But so today we are going to be working on the fire and ice pen. This was just an idea that I had, this fire and ice theme. Saw a couple of different pens online on Instagram. None that were like fire and ice. It's not like I saw somebody's thing and I was like, I'm going to make one of those. I saw different things where I saw like reds and then I saw blues, and I was like, oh, what if you paired, the fire and ice kind of theme? And we were kind of coming off of the winter pen that was kind of icy. So I thought, let's see what happens if you mix them both. And so what I did was we created a concoction of like 3 different kind of shades of color. And so I'm hoping that comes through. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily. The outsides of the blanks, I don't know, they look cool, but they're not like, wow, those are going to be amazing. The outside of the blank is always kind of a tough one because you're like, I don't know, it might look good, it might not. The insides hold all of that. I think the biggest thing for anybody that is kind of new to pouring vertically, you pour into like either PVC pipes or something where you're pouring into a cylinder. The problem is all that you see is the outside. Like when you are dumping the resin in, whatever runs down the sides, that's what you're seeing. And it's totally opaque because you've got color, well, unless you're doing like a totally transparent blank, but as long as you put any amount of mica powder in there, it's generally going to be pretty opaque, which means that thin layer on the outside is pretty much what you're seeing. Now it can go in a few millimeters, but you don't get to see any kind of, generally, you typically don't see a whole lot of like effects. And so in this case, we added transparent resin, we added 2 shades of color to each one. And I don't really think the outsides are really showing what the inside holds. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. Hopefully that's the case. So it should be kind of fun to see how these come out. So let's go to the overhead view. So actually, I'm going to go grab the blanks too so you guys can kind of see the whole batch. I haven't poured more because I want to see how these turn out. So I've been kind of waiting. This is the batch that we poured. And of course, I did a split cup because we want kind of a defined edge kind of thing. So, in many of these, we're seeing you're not going to get a straight line. But again, the outsides aren't necessarily telling of what's going on the inside. The inside may not have this kind of weird line. It's just that's what ran down the edge. So I think we did pretty good, kind of having like this kind of side-by-side thing. Now, like I said, some of these don't appear like they might be like that. And I'm not even that mad if it's not like a specifically defined line necessarily, but we do want some separation, maybe a little bit of overlap, some little tendrils going in. But I don't know, I think that these could be pretty cool, I'm hoping. Now you can see a little bit of kind of little weird things going on in here. It's not just a solid color for the most part. The red looks a little bit more like kind of a single color, but even here, you can see when you move it, there's a little bit of like banding going on. So I don't know, the insides might be kind of cool. I don't know. I'm just not sure. And that's the fun of it. I will say that I'm the type of person that would rather, one of the reasons I didn't switch, one of the reasons that I poured bricks of blanks for so long, because that's pretty much what I did for the most part. One of the reasons is I'm the type of person that I want to know what's going on a little bit more than this. So this actually kind of drives me up a wall a little bit. And you guys, I switched over to the team color blanks, and I cannot tell you how many test turned blanks I've turned. Hundreds, many hundreds at this point. Because you don't know. I don't know. Did it bleed a little bit? Am I getting the results that I want? And it just drives me up a wall. When you're pouring bricks, you have to cut them open, right? Which is the drawback to it. You're wasting resin. you know, it's a time consuming process, especially if you're trying to sell blanks. You got to cut all these bricks up and it just sucks. But the one redeeming factor is you have a little bit more control because you're not dumping it. The gravity's on your side a little bit more. So that's one of the benefits of pouring a brick. But you get different results and there's different things going on. But you have to cut them out. And so you have a pretty good idea of what's going on the inside when you're doing bricks of blanks, square blanks. So that's one of the reasons I didn't switch for a long time, because I'm like, I'm going to have to learn how to pour vertically, and that's going to take me forever. And you don't know, and I don't like not knowing things. It's not my favorite thing in the world. But overall, I've actually been happier. For the most part, there's certain things that you have to pour bricks. You just can't get around, especially if you're throwing chunks of wood or something like that. But overall, I've been actually a little bit happier with the vertical pour. You do have a lot of control. There are different things that you can do, different ways of pouring things, and all these kind of different stuff. I don't think it would be. I would say actually more difficult to try and do something where you have this line, unless you were using a physical barrier. Even if you were just doing slot, you'd have a tough time. Well, it would be, there are ways to get that kind of separated, like red and blue kind of thing. You could maybe just dump, 2 cups at the same time and try and get that. That would probably work in a brick. It would end up kind of not straight, I don't think. I think it'd be harder to pour it like straight. I think you have better odds getting a pretty straight division. But I'd almost say it might be a little easier doing something like a single blank kind of thing. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's easier vertically to do something like this. But anyway, so let me see who's here. Who do we have first? Mike McEwen was in there first. Nice. We got a lot of people in the chat today. I missed the mold pouring thing on Saturday morning cartoons. I was doing stuff earlier, but I caught the last few minutes. So it was fun. Hopefully they had a good time there. I'm just scrolling to see if there's any mentions, updates, anything that I need to mention here. I don't think so. I think we're all just having a good time. Cool. Your stream froze. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Our internet's been kind of weird. It's been really windy and crazy. We might actually get snow. Oh my God. I think they got some snow overnight. It's been rainy though right now. So one thing I do want to mention. So for the pen kit, I was having a tough time. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I was thinking like a Zen type thing, like a longer single blank would have been kind of a cool way to go. We've done a few Zens lately, and that's really kind of the only ones that I had that were that long single blank kind of thing. And I was looking, and I was back and forth. One of my favorite kits ever made is the Junior George, and specifically the antique, what do they call it? Antique silver? Yeah, antique silver. And I've linked down in the description. I'm going to go grab a link to this kit just in case anyone wants to take a look at them. Turner's Warehouse carries them. This has been one of, like, I would say this is like kind of my favorite kit. There's a lot of good kits. I don't know. But I've made a lot of these. I tend to really like the plating, the finish on these especially. I like the looks of them especially, but it's just like, it's a classic look. And I know that juniors can all kind of look the same sort of, there's not a ton of difference between a lot of the juniors. But for some reason, this one just always caught my eye. I really like it. But again, going back to it, so here's a link. Going back to it, the thing that I love about this kit is the finish, the plating. If you get like a chrome, like I don't care who, you touch it and it does stuff. Like it picks up stuff. With these, the way that the finish is like a brushed kind of finish, I don't care if you put oil on this thing, it's not going to change the look of it ever. So you always have this kind of, I don't know, it always looks good no matter what is going on, what the conditions are or anything. It just looks good. And so I really like that kit for that reason. And like I said, it's kind of a unique plating. It's just different enough compared to a lot of the other ones. Even like there's other like antique silver type things, and nothing is like this one. So I thought it'd probably go pretty well with this. I was thinking like a kind of a lighter color might kind of pop it a little bit. I was looking, I thought maybe like a, what do you call it? Like a gunmetal, and I kind of held it up and I'm like, I think it's just it just dulls everything. So before we move on and start turning this, one thing I'm going to do, so I did mark the outside of the blank somewhere. Where's my marks? Yep. Okay, so I put a little X right there. So this one's not going to be hard to line up, but what I'm going to do is I am still going to put a mark, and I don't really care if it's perfect. It really doesn't matter that much, but because I think we're going to be able to just line it up like by eye. It's not going to be like, oh, where was the line? Which side? I just want to make sure that I'm on the right side for both of these things. And so I just put a little mark. It just gives me an idea of, okay, this is the side. And I like to put it on the inside because obviously when we start turning this thing, it's going to be gone. Now, a couple other little quick thingies here. Let's see if this will show. So you might notice that my casting area looks a little bit different. I've been battling this for a while. I've needed to expand. I'm just going to pick this stupid thing up. I've needed to expand my pressure pots. And like the problem was I needed to redo the tabletop because it was too short. And I did that on both sides. I'll grab the camera real quick. So this, you might notice that there's still only 2 pressure pots here. I'm waiting for Turner's Warehouse to get these 2.5 gallon pots back in stock. The tariff thing kind of screwed stuff up with California Air Tools. So I think that they're going to be getting them back in stock soon. So I want another 2.5, and I really like these California Air Tools. One of the reasons that I've wanted another one. I was honestly just going to replace this California or C8 stupid thing, C8 Technologies, California Air Tools, C8 Technologies. But these pots are good. I'm not going to, if you can find one for cheap, then great. The problem is these things are the C8 Technologies, these ones. These things are so much more expensive. I'm talking like probably twice as much or something like that for, 2.5 gallon. And I can't possibly recommend it. It costs twice as much and you have to do all the plumbing work on it. Like it's not ready out of the box. It just it makes no sense. So I don't want people to see this and think, oh, that looks like a great pot. It is a great pot, but it ain't worth the money. These California Air Tools ones, by far, that's the one to get. They are just, you literally open the box. The only thing that you could adjust or do is you can adjust what do you call this thing? I can't think of the word. the regulator. You'll want to, I prefer adjusting the regulator so that I can just slam the air hose on, not worry about what the actual pressure. I don't need to sit here and stare at the pressure gauge because the regulator will stop filling with air at whatever you set it at. So to me, it's just the easiest thing. I don't have to think at all. I just slam the air on and walk away and finish cleaning or doing whatever I'm doing. So I'm waiting for that anyway. So I'll have 3 on this side, and then I've already got 3 over here. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. So I got 3 over there. We are styling at this point. And then I also have the 5 gallon down here, which I also want to replace that. I don't need to replace it. I'd rather have a California Air Tools personally. If I do use this, I'd rather be showing that on the stream than this thing. These, I looked up, I don't know, I haven't looked for a while, but the last time I looked up the CA Technologies version of the 5 gallon, I want to say it was like $700 or more. I was like, that's ridiculous. So anyway, fixed this all up, got some new, a new area. Now I don't have to worry. Part of the thing was when I was doing the square bricks with the team color blanks, I didn't necessarily need as many pots, because the one advantage to Alumilite White is I only needed to leave it in the pressure pot for like, and I went overboard, way overboard on this, but I would leave it in there for about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. So I could go through them, and I pour a lot of team color blanks. That's like the majority of what I do. So I only really needed 2 pressure pots for those. And then I had 2 other ones in a 5 to do the verticals, and everything kind of worked out. Alumilite Clear, I need to leave this Clear Slow. I mean, really, for these verticals, I got to leave them minimum 4 hours in the pressure pot. So there's less turnover in the pots. So I needed more pots at my disposal. That's why I switched. And I'm very happy doing the vertical team color ones with the clear. So the only thing in your shop you don't measure. Well, I do measure it. I get it where I want. If you're talking about the regulator, I get it where I want, and then I don't think about it. It's always the same. I really like that. The one thing that I will warn you guys about, if you get in the habit of doing that, this is a problem that I have. When I go to other people's shops and do demos or something like that, I'm not using my equipment. The problem is I'm used to just slamming the thing on there, and I don't have to worry because I know that it's not going to go crazy. Now, as long as you keep your safety valve on your pot, like, you really shouldn't have to worry about it like blowing up or going way overboard and something happening. If you haven't set the regulator and you forget or whatever, as long as there's a safety, and you definitely do not want to remove your safety valves on any pressure pot. People have done this, and I'm like, that's dumb. The safety will release before the pot goes, way overboard. But you don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to test my safety. I'd rather just have the regulator stop it where it's supposed to stop. And so just be aware of that. If you're not using your equipment and you're used to doing that, try to remember, like, oh, I got to make sure this thing doesn't, I don't know if it's set or not. So that's the one thing that kind of, I'm like, oh, whoops. So let's see here. Beaver. Yeah, it's probably similar. There's a couple different ones that are similar to this, but California Air Tools also, I like the company because they do kind of, although I wouldn't necessarily say they're like highly supportive of the resin casting community, but I mean, compared to other companies, they're involved. They understand. I'm pretty sure they were the first company to come out with a pressure pot, like, a resin casting specific model, and doing all the plumbing. Like, they listened to people being like, hey, it would be great is if you just set these things up the way that we need to do for resin casting, and they did it. So, like I said, I would say that they are probably the most involved in resin casting companies. So that's why I usually recommend the California Air Tools. There's, like I said, a couple other brands that look like this that people have copied. Generally, the quality is really good. And like I said, there are other companies that are way more supportive of like resin casting in general. But at least they listened and created something that we needed. So let's see here. No, I'd rather wait and just order it from Turner's. I'm not in the huge hurry. You can get them on Amazon too. I'd much rather like I said, we're going down the line. If I'm going to get one of these type of pressure pots, I'd like to get a California Air Tools because I'd like to support that company because they have given back to us a little bit at least, And then on top of that, I'd rather give my money to Turner's Warehouse than Amazon. So, or whoever, because obviously they support us for sure. So anyway, all right. So let's get to turning. I don't think I have any other news items or anything to talk about. Let's switch to this view. Got to fix that view a little bit there, but we're ready. I'm trying to think if there's any other newsworthy. One thing that it's not news or anything, but one thing I'm up to is I decided to really look. One of the problems, I can sharpen a chisel or a plane iron, no problem. excellent. I would classify myself as getting results that are excellent when I'm doing that. But that involves something that has a flat, what am I doing? A flat back, as opposed to like knives that have two angles, right? I'm not good at the two angled things. But if it has a flat back, I've got a really good method of sharpening that works every single time. I don't have to think about it. It's great. But I am absolutely horrid at sharpening knives. I just really I never really looked into like how to do it really well. But I recently have. And I bought some, and I looked at different options because I was like, I don't really care to be like a master knife sharpener in any sense. I just want sharp knives quick. So I looked into different apparatuses and things, you know, machines and stuff. Right now we use like the pull through things and they suck. I've known that's not a great way to sharpen something for quite a while, but they kind of get things a little bit sharp, but you don't hold the edge at all. So anyway, I looked into it, and what I decided was just stones. Like doing it freehand is probably the fastest way to get decent results. So I'm trying that out. Hopefully I will figure it out, and I'll let you know. I gotta open the YouTube app real quick and check out the chat. Where are we at here? Here we go. Chat is ready. We got our blank ready. Let's fix the camera view here a little bit. Oh, I gotta plug the camera in too. That'll help. That'll help keep the camera working the whole time. Okay, let's do this. Safety glasses. Okay. And I'm just using a standard cutter just because I don't want to switch them. Otherwise, I would actually typically go for the negatives, but I got the standard on and I'm ready. And one thing I will mention about the standard cutters that I find, when you put a brand new cutter on, or turn it to a brand new edge, they are a little bit more aggressive, like off the bat. They're a little grabby. So just be a little bit careful when you get that fresh edge on a standard cutter. Eventually it kind of dulls a little bit, and I would actually say that that's where I'd almost prefer it to be for turning resin, like a little bit duller, but just because they're not as aggressive, they're not as grabby. One thing that you can do to kind of help reduce that grabbiness or kind of tame the standard cutter is to raise your toolbar up a little bit, the tool rest, and angle it down just a little bit. That'll kind of help reduce the aggressiveness of it. I mean, that's what the negative rate cutters are doing basically. But it does kind of help a little bit. If you're finding it kind of grabby, that's all you got, try to angle it down. It's a little bit uncomfortable holding the tool funny like that, but it can help. And at the, and you still want to hit it like at the center line of the blank. So you might have to kind of play, move around with the adjustment of the tool rest and all that. But if you're finding the standard cutter is a little bit rough on resins, there are things that you can do. Generally, I recommend just using the negative rakes on resins. They work extremely well. But I got my cutter all set up and I don't have to mess with it. All right, so I'm going for it. We'll see what the results are when I get pretty close to the end. The unveiling. It's kind of fun for me too, because I have no clue what these things are going to look like in the end. Getting pretty close. So this is the body part of the pen that I'm turning right now. We'll do the cap second. All right, here we go. I'm gonna get the camera set up so you can see it pretty well here. When it stops rotating. Okay, here we go. Let's see what this thing looks like. Hopefully we'll be impressed. Ooh. We got a pretty defined line there. Look at all that. Looks like water or something. Pretty defined line on that side too. A little bit of feathering, which is, I think, kind of cool. It almost looks like flames. Wow, that turned out really interesting. A lot of depth. You can, I don't know if you guys can see. We'll probably get an even better glimpse of this. Let me kind of get in here, see what you guys are seeing on the camera, so I can point it out a little bit better. There we go. Focus. This is an old camera, but I don't know if you can see these lines here. That's the transparent resin. So you're going to get a lot of depth now. Once we polish this, it's going to be even crazier. But that's what I was saying. We got a couple of different colors of micas, which I can also I can pick out in here. The different kind of shades, which is probably going to, once we polish it, give it some pretty neat looking effects. But these dark lines are actually that transparent resin, I'm pretty sure. The one thing, I didn't paint the tube, so we'll have to see how the brass works with this. And then looking in the blue here, same thing. We've got some kind of transparent looking areas, but I would actually say those might be the lighter colors in the blue. Yeah, I don't know. We got a couple of different colors of mica. We got some dark and some light. And then we've got these areas that look kind of dull. That's going to be your transparent spots. So pretty much what I was kind of hoping for, I would say. I didn't know what to expect, you know. I'm not sure that I would say this is the most amazing. I mean, we haven't polished it, so we'll have to see, but is it the most amazing thing I've ever made? I don't know about that, but I really like the effects. That's kind of what I was hoping for there. What I had in mind was that kind of where you get a lot of effects going on. And I think that, you know, when we were putting this all together, like I was saying, even if you just did like 2 different shades of mica and we did it dirty pour style, where we poured all the colors into 1 cup, then poured them into the mold. You know, for, you know, red, we had 1 cup for red and 1 cup for blue that had all of those colors just kind of dumped together. Even if you just did 2 colors of mica powder, it's going to give you something different than just doing 1 color of mica. It's going to give you some different stuff. And then when you add that transparent, and again, I want to give credit where it's due. The transparent thing, I had never done that before until I saw a Fig Boot on Penn's video. He had Jonathan Brooks on, and he was talking about that, and I was like, that's brilliant. You know, do a dirty pour with transparent resin with a mica powder, and just that alone is going to give you extreme depth when you're in your pen. You know, in those effects, it's going to make it even deeper because you're literally going to be able to see in further. The one thing, if you're going to do the dirty pour kind of thing, though, is you do have to there's a lot of timing going on. You have to wait. You don't want to just mix up 3 different cups and then dump them all together right away. It's all just going to be homogenized and you're going to have 1 color. You need to wait, maybe not to the point where you were going to pour it, but pretty close. You know, you need it thicker before you pour it together. And thicker resins may work a little easier with you may have a wider timing zone if you're starting with a thicker resin. The problem is a lot of those, you know, thicker resins are super long working times. So I would still recommend, even if you're using like an epoxy or something like that, it's got like a 30-minute working time, just because it's thicker, I wouldn't recommend dumping it together right away. You still want to kind of wait till the end of the working time. Because it can just sit in that cup, and you know, if you did it right away and then it sat there for 30 minutes, I'd almost guarantee, even though it's a thicker resin, it's all just going to kind of clump together eventually. So let me grab some. I like to put gloves on when I'm working with this water stuff. It just dries out my skin. So let's see here. It spins purple. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's kind of mottled a little bit. It's just kind of a weird, and you know, you're gonna get slightly different results. You know, the one thing I will say about dirty pours is, you know, you're probably gonna get slightly different results every time because it just depends on how it kind of mixes together. Different blanks. You know, different. You know, I poured and then we did a split cup. So this was a fairly multi-stage, intricate kind of. Lots of things going on, pour. But, you know, depending on where, you know, which blank, like the first one is going to be different than the last one. Just depending on where all those 3 colors, how they kind of went together, you know, in that dirty pour type thing. It's kind of a crazy thing. It's cool because you're going to get a lot of unique blanks. Some of them are going to have, like I said, depending on what part of the cup or whatever of that dirty pour, you know, a certain blank hits. Some of them are going to have more transparent resin. Some of them are going to have more of like the 1 color. It's just going to be, it's not going to be all like equal, even kind of thing. It'll be kind of random. Yeah, it's definitely chatoyant already. I did, yeah, and I mean, it's totally dull and scratched and all that stuff. So I think as we polish this up, it's going to really pop. Like you're really going to see that, how that depth pops out on these things. And I'm hoping that we'll, one thing that wasn't super apparent was like the different, we also did 2 different colors of micas. I'm hoping that that kind of pops out a little bit more after we polish it. I think it will. It'll be probably subtle. It's not like you're gonna, it's not like it would be the same thing as if you poured those separately. You would definitely see the 2 different shades, but I'm hoping that a little bit of subtle shade difference kind of pops out a little bit more when we polish these guys. Love the, I don't know what that word is. G-A-O-S. So I'm starting out here with the 600 grit wet or dry silicon carbide sandpaper. I really like this stuff. This stuff really, it'll take off a good amount of material, but it allows, like, I find that I get the same sanding job done. Let's say, it's kind of a weird way to put it, but it does the same work as 400 grit aluminum oxide, which is kind of crazy to me. But it allows me to start at a finer grit. And I think that that's a good thing to do. The higher you can, every stage of the pen turning process, kind of works hand in hand. The smoother you can get it off the tool, the higher the grit you can start with. Oh, I got to go get paper towels here. I've literally for like an entire week meant to replace the paper towel thing behind me. And I think of it and I'm like, oh, I got to do that. And then I walk away. Luckily, I've got another one across the room there. Yeah. Already that's starting to kind of pop out a little bit. Very blingy. But we're still dull. So now we're moving on to the polishing papers. So these are the Zonas. So the next step, I go with the green. And that's, I like to call it, I don't know, they say that it's like a 600 grit also, but to me it operates more like an 800. And I think it just has to do with the different type of abrasive that it is. It doesn't take off the same kind of material that silicon carbide paper does. And to me, it just kind of, it seems to leave a finer grit scratch than silicon carbide 600. So it's a slight step up. And then I just finish off with the gray Zona and then switch over to the magic juice. Chaos. I like the chaos. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm missing something. Is this some newfangled Gen Z or whoever internet meme? Keyboard chaos. Tim is in the house. All right, so we'll just get this nice and polished up here with the green. Yeah, and once you hit the green, like then it starts really getting up there and looking. This, I love this. I like, so definitely in the blue, you can definitely see the different shades. There's some dark, there's some light, and there's also these areas that are just kind of still dull. And I think that those are going to be like the those dull areas that don't seem to be like shiny. That's where the transparent stuff is. And I think that, so again, there's different areas that are going to show up in different blanks depending on how that dirty pour all ended up. I kind of feel like there's a little bit less of the transparent, or it's a little bit more like thinner stripes of it in the blue, whereas in the red, we've got some pretty deep, a lot of these lines are transparent red. So there's a little bit more of it in there. It's pretty cool looking. I like this. This is pretty cool. Like I said, I wasn't sure exactly. I didn't have like a picture of how this is really going to look. Sometimes you do that. You're like, oh, I want the pen to look like this in the end. And I didn't really have that in mind. I just had a vague idea of, I want this themed idea clashing together. And then without really, like I said, painting a picture in my brain about how it's going to turn out, just throwing, a few different shades, the transparent with a couple different shades of color into a dirty pour, I kind of have an idea of what to expect with that. It's going to create this kind of depth. But I didn't really have a picture in my mind. So this has been kind of fun to see this. What is it going to look like? Is it cool or not? I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. I think it gets the idea across. Again, is it mind-boggling? I don't know. I don't know if it's like the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen, but it's pretty cool looking, I think. Give it that, and then dry it off. At this point, I don't really think that the paper towel is scratching it more than the gray necessarily, paper. Kind of at the point where I think once you start doing the magic juice, you're probably better off not just wiping it around too much with paper towels. The blue paper towels I don't mind as much, but I don't think that once I start polishing it, I wouldn't really want to just pull out a Scott, white paper towel thing and start rubbing all over it. I think you're going to scratch it up. So I'm going to go get some blue paper towels. They're a little bit less abrasive. And I think once you get the magic juice on top of the surface, once it's kind of wet, I think that's what's really doing the polishing, the scratching. That's my theory so far. Yeah, and so these two colors look pretty good. The other thing about this is, you don't have to do this kind of like side by side thing or whatever. The other nice thing about just doing the way that I did this, like let's just get rid of the split cut part and the fire and ice. If you want to add a very unique and a little bit more depth, then that kind of blending of, like I said, either different colors of mica powders or mixing in a little bit of that transparent resin with mica powders and doing the dirty cup pour thing, will give you very unique looks in your blanks. Not to say that mica powders on their own, we all love them. They look great. But, let's just say if you were going for a red, you wanted to add a red in among, other colors in your blank. If you just threw in some Yamagata red, sure, it's going to look fine. That's not the issue. But if you wanted to add a little bit of extra to it, maybe you just add a little bit of that transparent and do a dirty cup, and you're going to get something completely different than just standard Yamagata red. That's, I think, the takeaway really from this. Yours will stand out a little bit more than someone that just dumped in some Yamagata red, if you want that. Or maybe you just want to see something a little different. All right, so let's see here. I got a little rag. I like to do it this way. I do that, and then oh man, I'm telling you, you literally, even after just step one, you could just walk away and be like, pretty much good enough. It just makes such a change compared to that gray. Just livens up. Oh, that looks great. I do like that effect. Let's get you guys in here. It just, when you wipe it off like that, and the colors, hopefully it's coming through on the screen here. It does look like fire. I mean, there's almost like little flames going on in the red. I really like this. And, you know, again, other blanks in this thing may look, you know, they're all going to look a little bit different. But the one thing I will say is all of these blanks, because of the way that we did this with the split cup, you're going to have kind of lengthwise things going on. You're not going to have a lot of like curly looking or swirl type sideways patterns going on. You're going to have a lot more long wisps of stuff going on in these just because of the way that we poured it. This is a little, you know, it's a little wispy lengthwise. I do like this blue as well. And the other thing is, the one thing the camera isn't picking up is I'm moving my head, you know, bobbing it kind of. And even that, like no matter what angle you start changing, you get like different looks in this resin. It's pretty cool. So I hope you guys try the dirty pour thing. I think you'll be kind of surprised. You'll be like, wow, that's doing a lot more stuff than if I would have just poured some mica powder in there. All right, so let's go to number 2. Yeah, there's a little bit of orange. There is, like I said, it's a little bit subtle, but there is a little bit of orange, almost like a copper almost looking kind of thing going on in there. We kind of, I forget how we did that. You'll have to go back to the video last week, the stream replay. Kind of added, I wanted it to be a little bit more orange. All right, so number 2. And I never use this rag with the lathe running. That is a recipe for disaster. Turn it off. And the other thing is, it's just not a bad idea to give it similar to how, you know, when we do the sanding, excuse me, dry throat. You know, we got the lathe spinning, we sand, and then we stop it and we put some lengthwise scratches in. This is kind of doing the same thing. A little bit. Just that little hand rubbing with some of the leftovers is going to, even with this liquid, liquid plastic polish, will give you some buffing action kind of in the opposite direction. So it kind of serves two purposes. It's a safety thing, but it's also not a bad thing to do, period. I just use moderate pressure. You don't need to, this isn't like a friction polish, you know. It's also wiping off the previous, you know, polish, obviously. You want to get that surface clean because you don't want little step 1 particles hanging around when you're doing step 3. All right, thanks, Vinny. Did I use sheed? No, no sheed. All it was 2 different micas. I want to say that I used, I could look up the recipe. I think it was, so for blue anyway, I think it was Bahama blue from P-Town, and I think I used 2 P-Towns. Might have been the Sapphire? I might have used Dark Ocean, I don't know. One of those two, where it's kind of just a little bit darker blue, and then the Bahama is kind of this lighter blue, and it's kind of a different type of mica particle. It's a little bit more glittery. Not like a, it's a weird one. It's not like, you know, like 14 karat or like a macro or something like that, but it's just more glistening for some reason somehow. The particles glisten more with the Bahama. It's slightly different, but it is definitely like a mica powder. It's in that family. It's just a little different than like Dark Ocean blue. Let's see, where are we at? 4. I kind of like to go with these little microfiber pad things for 5 and 6. It seems to be working pretty well. I don't know. I'm going to cut up a couple of these guys and use them. And then for the red, I'm sure Yamagata was one of them. Offhand, oh, we used a random one. It wasn't fire. I was gonna use fire. I thought, oh, fire red or orange, fire orange. But that's not what we actually used. There was one that was a little bit more orange. Shibuya, I think. Or maybe khaki. Yeah, I think it was Shibuya. And then I just used the Alumilite transparent dyes for the transparent colors. Which, you know, there's just lots of different ways to do it. All right, so we got our number 5 here. All right. And then number 6. I love number 6 because it also kind of just cleans it up, and it also, I'm pretty sure it's got like an anti-static thing going on with it. That was one of the things that kind of blew my mind with the magic juice also. One issue is, you know, the more you polish things, and depending on what type of polish and things that you use on these pens, sometimes they can be very staticky because you're like, you know, rubbing plastic stuff. So it can get a little staticky, but the other thing is fingerprints. And certain, you know, buffing rouges, or, you know, some people use wax, which I think is not a good idea. But some of these things tend to just be fingerprint attractors. It picks up oils and stays there. And this number 6 step of the magic juice really seems to kind of deter that, actually. It's kind of crazy. I really like, it's like almost like it cleans it. And I know that the Novus, if anybody's familiar with Novus plastic polish, it was kind of the same deal with that. they had a step 3, and it had no. The step 6 of Magic Juice actually is a polish. It is doing polishing work, whereas that Novus step 3 was really just a cleaning agent, and that would also deaden the static that you can get sometimes, as well as like kind of clean the surface and make it a little bit less prone to fingerprinting, or grabbing oils and holding on to them. All right, so let's get the camera in here. Do kind of a vertical look at this thing. I mean, look at that. It just bam, It just really pops out at you. There's lots of different like layers to the color almost. Depending on how, you move it, it does different stuff. And not to say that, mica powders do similar things. I mean, they have like a chatoyance to them. But a lot of times you're not going to get as much of like a different shade. Some of them do look a little, there's like darker spots and lighter. But I just don't think that you're going to get as much as if you did something like this, where you've got some transparent resin, you've got some in 2 different colors of micas. And the other thing about it is we mixed, like I was saying about the Bahama blue, it's like a different type of mica anyway. In different micas may have like different particle sizes. There are different things going on in different ones. Go look on the Eye Candy website. They show you like the particle size of each one. And so that can have some different effects on things, where some areas may have, a specific particle type. Others are different. And so it just creates a lot more interest in the resin areas. So anyway, hopefully that's, it's kind of an in-depth thing. A lot of you guys might have already kind of known a lot of that stuff. But for anybody that didn't necessarily know anything about that, not all mica powders, I don't know that I necessarily want to say are created equal. I don't know how they are exactly made, but there are definitely different particle sizes and things going on with mica powders that do set, one apart from another. And that's another reason why I like Eye Candy, because they actually tell you those things, which is kind of unheard of. I don't know. I don't know anybody else that's being like, hey, this one's, 50 micron, or I don't know, whatever. And it's not like it's a specific number. Usually they're kind of like between this and that. But it gives you an idea. Like some are bigger and some are smaller. And there probably are quality issues, quality differences between certain, I don't know, some sort of a quality control. I don't know enough about the mica stuff, industry to really comment on that. They all seem to be fairly similar, but they have different properties to me. But there may even be quality things. I do, in general, this is just me noticing things. I mean, the Eye Candy pigments they all work well. Whereas in some cases, and I don't know if it has to do with particle size or, some other random thing, some of them are, some brands that I've used in the past, I'm like, I'd rather use this other one, whether it be from like Eye Candy or someone else. Yeah, it's kind of icy, like I do like the ice. And again, I want to attribute a lot of that ice look to Bahama. So we're going over to the other overhead here. I want to show you guys the Bahama if you haven't seen it. It's different. I don't know. And this is a P-Town. What did we actually, I want to look up what the other blue is in this. What did we use? Rainbow. Okay, I remember. Yeah, the blues are all P-Towns. The reds are all Eye Candy. So I would say that Rainbow, maybe there's a slight difference in shade, but Rainbow is pretty much the same thing as Dark Ocean. I like the Dark Ocean. That's one that I go to a lot, but Rainbow from P-Town, I can't see a difference. So I was like, oh, let's just use those. We'll do blue with, you know, P-Town ones, and rainbow's good. I would say it's, I mean, really kind of the same thing as dark ocean. But I want to show you this, and I want to compare this. Do I have another light blue? Aqua blue. I don't know. That's similar looking, kind of. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, but this Bahama, it just seems like it's got more like of a glistening effect going on. I think it's a decent one for, like, you know, for like light waters, and even I think that's what's kind of really popping some of that ice feel, which is why I used it. It just tends to look a little bit different in the end than the effects are a little bit different than if you just use like this rainbow. It doesn't have a glistening effect. Now, one that I will say also kind of does that a little bit is actually Okinawa blue from Eye Candy, a little bit, but it's not exactly this. I don't know. It's almost like there's like glitter to me in the Bahama blue. It seems different to me. I don't know. I may be just kind of crazy. Who knows? Let's switch cameras. How about that? Let's see. That's the wrong one. Let's go back to turning. All right, so let's turn the cap part. Get this thing rolling here. Doesn't I don't know. Eye Candy's got, I think they got like a 12 days of Christmas or something going on. So I think that those all kind of hold the whole way through. So, but again, the Bahama is P-Town. I don't know if Eye Candy's got the same. I don't know of something from Eye Candy that's like the Bahama. They might. I mean, honestly, they've got a lot, but it's kind of hard to tell just from like the website. Oh. All right. All right, we're getting close. Kind of sneaking up on this guy here. Trying to anyway. One problem I have with using gloves is they tend to get kind of sticky on the tool rest, and that can kind of screw you up if you're trying to do more precise movements with the tool. I am just mangling this thing. Yeah, that did not go very well. God, there's a couple areas where it kind of grabbed. Definitely not happy with that. Oh well. I gotta stop turning because I'm just gonna turn off the rest of this thing. Yeah, that's the one problem. Like, I was trying to be lazy and not have to waste another pair of gloves when I started sanding. But it kept grabbing on the tool rest, and it was messing me up. So this this cap is crap. I gotta be honest. Don't look too close at the cap. It'll be fine. Laziness has its drawbacks. All right, we're off to the races here. No, Randy, these are all going in the Pin Blank Club boxes. I'm not gonna make any extras, unfortunately. It's tough. I know that it's kind of, I can't win either way. The whole point of the Pen Blank Club is to have exclusives, but it's kind of hard to, you know, show these live on these things, and people always want them. But that's kind of the point of the Pen Blank Club, you know. Who knows? I might bring them out down the road. You know, give the exclusivity a little bit of time, and then maybe bring them out or something similar. That's one of the nice things about doing these. You know, we can kind of experiment on the stream, and then in some cases, you know, the experiment might need some tweaks. So, you know, down the road, I may come out with something that's a little bit tweaked. but uses the same type of thing, you know, similar. Yeah, that is the best part about turning these blanks. I think that's the real addiction or seduction. The real thing for me with like making your own blanks. I think it's really fun to you know, make something and then be like, okay, you know, what does it look like? that even buying them, you know, you don't know for sure what's going to be on the inside, but I think it adds another layer when you're able to pour your own and then, you know, see, like, you have this idea, pour them, and then you kind of get to this point where you're like, what does it look like? What secrets are hiding on the inside? So that is one of the, I would actually say that is a drawback and an advantage to doing the vertical. I was talking about that earlier, where it kind of drives me crazy that I'm like, I have no clue, you know, how these look on the inside. And the only way to find out is you got to turn one, which is, you know, it's not like that's a bad thing. But when you're trying to do something specific and you're just pouring batch after batch, it really gets time consuming, having to wait to be able to turn something to see what it looks like. You know, there's a lot of time in between batches and things. So that can be a little bit of a drawback, but at the same time, it's kind of a cool thing because you don't know, you know, there's a little bit of mystery involved. Makes it kind of fun. Okay, so let's pull out our magic juice. Love this little tray thing. All right, so step one. I think it's about time to get a new rag. Trying to find a clean spot on this thing. It's starting to become difficult. Ooh, I like that. And you know, down here, I don't know if you guys can see. You see, yeah. You know, it's not like a defined line, but that's, you know, because I knew that if there's going to be deviations, it's not going to be particularly sideways. It's going to be more of an up and down, you know, along the length of the blank. And so, you know, this is kind of cool. I would imagine that a lot of the blanks have little areas where there's almost like these like flames coming off, which I think, you know, is cool for these blanks. Got a little bit of a blob here. You know, that's a little out of place. I will say that I can see, so there's definitely some transparent blue. And I can make out the tube, I think, in some of this. There is some transparent parts where I can see the tube. Now, it's not like it's standing out and it's crazy or anything like that or looks terrible, but just be aware, if you're going to go with put transparent resin in and make a mixture like that, you can have, just due to the weight, and then do like a, you know, split cup or something. You don't even have to do a split cup, but if you've done a dirty pour where you've got like mica, which is like opaque, and then you've got this transparent resin, just be aware, if you're making a pen that's got a tube, there could be large areas where a lot of that transparent came out. So I didn't think that it was going to be that big of a deal, and I was also just kind of curious to see. But you're probably better off painting the tubes, you know, just to not have that. especially if you don't, especially with certain colors where like the brass tube will just stick out like a sore thumb. It's not really apparent on this one, which is good. But it probably could have been. If I had larger areas of that transparent blue, it may be more noticeable and kind of be a little bit of an eyesore. It doesn't bother me on this one. Really, it's not that big of a deal, but painting the tube's not a bad idea though, when you're using transparent dyes. So there's a question, am I correct that the pigments can also be used as an inlay? Pigments. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, yeah, I would imagine. I'm not sure I'm not picturing what you have in mind as like an inlay. Are you talking about like inlay? Like if you like laser engraved this and then backfilled it like an inlay like that. But you can add, like you could add mica powder to like UV resin, or that may be a little bit less great because the mica might affect the curing on a UV. But like, 5-minute epoxy or CA glue, you can add like mica powder to anything. You could add the Alumilite dye to all those things also, any resin or anything like that. The one thing is those things are very concentrated, so you might want to use very, very small amounts if you're doing like an inlay, something small like that. But I think, yeah. So if you cut a line on a pen, yeah, so like, yeah. And then like backfilled it with like a resin. But yeah, you can add it to any kind of, like mica powder, you can add to any resin, which I would include like a, CA glue even, or, 5-minute epoxy is not particularly much different than, casting resin. Any epoxy, you can add it to UV resin sometimes. Just because of the way that it works, it may not be the greatest. You may have problems with it curing. I'm going to do number 3 again. Just didn't seem like I had enough there. And then, I would say just be a little bit careful if you're using like a liquid dye, liquid pigment or whatever. Be a little bit careful. You don't want to add too much of that stuff to like a 5-minute epoxy. So if you just had like a little cup and you were going to just use like a 5-minute epoxy or something like that, or CA glue, and you add like a full drop of like liquid pigment to a pretty small blob of like 5-minute epoxy, that may cause curing problems. So just, like a toothpick amount or something like that. Just be a little bit careful with how much of the liquid stuff you add. And the reason for that is the liquid part of it, all pigments are just made of little flakes of color, pretty much. The liquid part of it is a chemical, and so that can affect, it'd be like dumping in some like acetone into casting resin, or that's not like a volatile chemical, but and some of them actually have like another resin type of resin. Don't think of it like casting resin, but it is somewhat similar, is what that liquid stuff is. And so it'd be like adding even more resin to your mixture of the resin and hardener. So anyway, the point is that's what causes some issues with curing. So you want to be a little careful with the liquid pigments. In general, you can add as much, you could dump a whole kilogram of mica powder and resin, and it'll cure most likely. Let's see, what am I doing? I'm going to grab one of those little sheet things. And so these guys are a little different. It's like a microfiber type thing. So, if this thing is not going to rip. So I'm using a very small piece of it, but there is some risk that it could get caught up and then somehow like wrap my finger up on the lathe. So just be aware, if you're going to be using something like this, there's some risk involved. I'm confident that it will just fall out of my fingers and not wrap it up because it's pretty small. But there is a slight chance that somehow it could wrap up and injure me. You always want to try to use something that's going to just rip. If you're using like a rag or doing that type of stuff on the lathe. But those things are typically will scratch stuff. So like microfiber based thing generally isn't going to scratch plastics. So just be careful when you're doing these things. I like to use it for the last two steps, just to ensure that I'm on the finest particle grit. I'm not introducing, I'm not rubbing it around with something that's like sandpaper. But I don't know that it's 100% necessary. All right, so step 6. Our favorite, and there's a chunk of something in there. Get rid of that. And as far as speeds go, I usually run my lathe around 1500. I think they recommend on the instructions like 2000. I don't know if it just has to do with like how dry it is maybe here, but that just seems to like it just doesn't seem to work as well. It seems to just heat up really quick and kind of, I don't like it. I don't know what the right answer is, but 1500 works fine for me. You might have to kind of play around with your speeds. And then moderate pressure when I'm applying this stuff. Okay. We are there. Yeah, yeah, like a ring. Yeah, you can totally add all those things. Like I said, just be a little bit cautious. It depends on what type of thing. Like a 5-minute epoxy, or like even like a CA glue, it's going to cure on its own, so you don't have to worry about anything. UV resins though require the resin to be hit with a UV light, and if whatever you've added is like totally opaque, it's not the UV light just won't get to the resin, so it won't cure in some cases. Some of them work if like some part of the resin can get hit with the UV light, it'll kind of cure the whole thing. But generally, UV resins like to be kind of transparent to cure. But CA glue and casting resins and all that kind of stuff, you can add it. Just, again, be a little cautious of how much you add if you're dealing with like a liquid pigment, like the Divine Pigments, My Pigments, the Color Lab. The pigment paste stuff from Eye Candy, things like that. And even the Alumilite dyes, which are transparent, they are very concentrated. So I guess there's two things going on with that. It doesn't take much to get color usually with those, number one, but because they're so concentrated, you really just want to add a little bit if you're doing, if you're only adding it to a little bit of resin, epoxy, or CA glue. Too much can kind of throw off the chemistry on those things. That thing's looking pretty good. You got a pretty good solid, dividing line there. And then I actually, like I said, I knew that I was pretty certain, most likely, the whole blank is not going to have like a solid line. Like that's pretty tough to do. But I really like the way that this turned out because it's kind of almost, it makes me think of flames. Does it look like a fire flame? Totally, no. But if you're going to have that, it kind of reminds me of that at least. It goes with the theme, at least, let's say. So let's put this pen together and see what we got. So I made little marks and they don't seem to be showing up right now. Always happens that way. I think that's it. Yeah. Doesn't matter that much. I did want to kind of try to know which. Yeah, okay. So I got that side. That's fine. Wanted to kind of know how the blank was like laid out originally, just so I could know that information. Sometimes though, you know, even if I line something up, sometimes a different way of let me switch over so I can explain what I'm talking about. I made little marks so that I knew how these things lined up together, which I think it's, there it is. Made a little mark there, and we got a little mark there. So this was how the blank kind of laid out in line. Now, you know, I made a cut on the table saw, so like really I'm losing like a 32nd inch, you know. Best off, one problem is I only have one bandsaw now, and I put on this kind of special blade to cut like a whole variety of things, especially abrasive materials and stuff. But the problem is that thing takes out a pretty good kerf. The bandsaw with a small, you know, high tooth count blade is the best way to cut a blank if you're, you know, especially on like a two-piece. That way you're minimizing how much you've actually taken out. Now in this case it's a straight line, and I mean really the kerf doesn't make any difference, but if you got like patterns or wood grain and stuff going on, if you cut out a 32nd, it could totally throw off the alignment. So in some cases, you know, I'll mark the blank and I know, okay, this is how it was supposed to go, but it doesn't really look right, and so in some cases you might have to actually swap it or do something a little different. So I like having these I like this position. I like having that on one end. I wouldn't want to do it like this. This would be kind of a weird, it doesn't even line up that way really, but yeah, I like it like that. So I'm going with how I wanted it. This one I can flip either way because it's the same size and it doesn't matter necessarily, but the body has to only go one way. Okay, so let's get things in here. Oh, I moved things around when I redid the pressure pot areas, so it's actually making things a little easier with the alignment of the camera and everything. What ended up happening was I moved this table back, and so my lights, this is a much more lit up area now because the lights have moved over, so I could also rotate the camera and everything's great. So I don't know if that made sense or anything, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep everything lined up here. Oh, that didn't work. Get the handle out of the way first. Gotta learn how these things, what's happening here. There we go. Okay. Ooh, nice. A lot of the kits that I've been putting together lately, God, they've been so tight. That was nice. That was a nice one. Still haven't put a felt piece on. One of these days I'm going to do that. Okay. Now, I'll put this thing on here. I always like to make sure that I've buried it all the way. Sometimes it's hard to tell. And then, let's see here, it went like this. So hopefully that'll stay put. Oh, this thing. I gotta get one of those Milescraft ones, I think. This thing's making me annoyed. Why is it doing that? Okay, let's try this. All right, let's make sure that I got that right, just in case. Oh, I did it good. Okay. Now, well, let's see. So now I got to look at the clip and see, like, how do I want this to go? I'm gonna actually take the clip off, and I'm thinking I'm going to probably put it right down the middle of the line. I could put it on this other side that's got... I don't really like just putting it on the blue, because I could cover up this little blob. Like, that wouldn't be the worst use of the clip. But I don't really like putting the clip on just... I really think that it needs to go where it's down the middle. So I think this is the best place where it's kind of solid the whole way. I think I like that the best. I don't know. You could make an argument for a lot of different... for anything, I think. The clip is kind of sprung right now, and so I'm going to kind of sneak up a little bit and try and make sure that I can get that. I want this clip to kind of split the colors there. I need to come in just a little bit more. Like, it looks off right now, but it's kind of crooked. So I'm just going to kind of try to sneak up on this thing and... Okay, got it. Yeah, I like that. And again, I like the antique silver. It's a good, I don't know, it creates an interesting, that lighter color between these two. It's not, like, the blue is kind of light. That's why I like this antique silver as the choice for the plating on this. Gunmetal wouldn't have created another, like, color line. It would have just kind of, I don't know. I held up the gunmetal. I'm not sure which kit it was, but I was holding up a gunmetal kit to this, and I was like, it just doesn't really... I think I was holding up the Zen gunmetal. So I want to show you what I was seeing. The colors in the blank just melted into this. I don't know. It just didn't provide that nice of a... I don't know. It was just too dark. Like, I just felt like it was going to really darken everything up. I don't know if you can... let's make it... I don't know. It didn't pop. Like, this is enough of a contrast from both colors to work, whereas that kind of darker gunmetal, And I didn't really like... I kind of held up a brass. I was like, Gold didn't really seem to work for me. So I think we nailed it on this one with this antique silver. I think that was a really good choice. Like I said, it really depends on how the light hits it, and it you know, it goes in multiple directions. I feel like, depending on which way you turn it, because we've got so many different things going on with the resins, I think that really adds to that effect. I like it. It's pretty cool. Fire and ice. I think I accomplished what I was setting out to do. Let's put some ink in this thing. How about that? Oh, one last step also. We got to put a little bit of wax on those threads because they sound horrible, and nobody wants a pen that goes squeak, squeak, squeak when you're changing the stuff in there. You can use any kind of wax or whatever. I just have this Renaissance stuff. It dries. What I like about this, why I pick this, because I also have some just paste wax, which is a lot cheaper than this. So it would actually make more sense to use the just standard off the Minwax paste wax. The thing about the Renaissance wax, it dries super fast. So I always pull that out to do these threads because I don't have to worry about it. And it's very thin. So that's why I choose this, but you really don't have to. Like, don't go out and buy Renaissance wax just to do this. It's ridiculously expensive. It does have certain uses that I like having it on hand for, but see, now that totally got rid of that squeakiness compared to this. That's horrible, you know? So always wax the threads on these things. It'll just make it even just makes it move smoother, the screwing action there. Makes it work a little bit better anyway, but it'll get rid of that squeak, and nobody wants a squeak, especially if somebody bought one of these things from me. Yeah. They're like, oh, that's terrible. Just takes a little bit. Honestly, you could even just rub a candle on these things. I actually had to do that one time for a pen that I sold, and I had it at home and I was shipping it. And at that time I lived 30 minutes from the shop, and I'm like, I got to get this thing out today. And I forgot to do the wax on the threads, and I was like, what do I do? And obviously I didn't have paste wax at my apartment, so I was like, do we have any candles? And I just rubbed a candle on it, worked fine. Did the job. So now we got squeak free on both ends. And usually the main, you know, because it's a plastic thing that's on the inside, you shouldn't have to do that on the body and cap threads. Wow, I think I've screwed this thing on the right way every single time at this point, because it's a triple. So one of the cool things is that worked out pretty perfect. So you could technically have it be like squares or whatever, like quadrants. Maybe it's like a double. Seems like it's like a double screw. A couple different ways to do it, but so that's pretty cool. Anyway, let's see what you guys have to say about it. Both of those, yeah. Yeah, the dark, they're both, I guess that's what it is. They're both bold in that dark. I was like, eh. And I don't think, I think I even looked at, so I'm pretty sure that the Junior George, that same kit, I'm pretty sure, well, I know at one point it came in an antique gold or bronze or something like that. I don't think I have one on hand. But I want to say that I think gold would have been just too bleh, like it just doesn't go together. But like a bronze or an antique bronze kind of thing, antique brass, whatever, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how that would. I'm just gonna pull out like a Sierra type thing that has antique brass in it. That might have gone. I don't know. I didn't really have a kit that would have for this that I would have really wanted to use with this. But let's just take a look at this. What's going on here? Yeah, it just, I don't know. I don't think that really, it doesn't really do it for me. I really like this antique silver. I think that was the way to go for sure. Okay. white could have worked, which I think in the past, I think I've actually made a red, white, and, well, I made a red, white, and blue blank, like kind of similar to this, where it was like a split cup with 3 colors. But you could even probably do like a white kit, or I don't know what they call it, like satin silver a lot of times. Because I was looking at that with the Zen pen. And I think that would have worked. It's very similar to this antique silver, a little bit lighter even though. But you could find like a whitish or something very light silver, and I think that would have worked fine. I just, like I said, we've done a couple of Zens fairly recently, and I was like, I think that would be a good one for this type of a kit though. I think it's interesting having a 2-piece that goes together like that. I think that's kind of cool. You got the bands and all those things, but because this is a very vertical kind of thing, lengthwise, I think that something like a Zen or like the I don't know, what are some of the other really long single blanks? Vertex, I think, is another one. That would probably be a decent pick. I would think. I'm thinking that a single longer would be pretty cool for something like this too. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. This kit, so Junior George, I got it linked below, and I'm going to drop a link in the whatever in the comments right here. So this is, and I got it at Turner's Warehouse. One of my favorites, the Junior George. Like I said, I really like it's simple, but it's like, I don't know what it is about it. It just, like, the simpleness of it, I like. The clip is, I mean, simple, but it for some reason, I think the shadowing, you know, you get like that darker kind of like weathering look on this, the antiqueness of it. I mean, there's not much going on. Like it's very, very simple. There's, you know, I mean, there's other kits that have all kinds of embellishments and craziness going on all over the place. This doesn't have much going on. I mean, it's like the simplest thing, but that weathering on the simple parts really just does it. And like I was saying, the antique silver, you could touch it with your, like, I don't even need to be wearing gloves. I mean, I could maybe get fingerprints on the blank itself, but you know, like silver, if this was normal silver and I started doing that, my hands are a little, you know, sweaty-ish, just a little bit, but it's enough sweatiness to, on like a polished silver, I'd have fingerprints all over this thing, and I'd have to wipe it off before I took a picture or anything. With the antique silver stuff, though, the antiquing, and it's almost like it's brushed silver, but it's, you know, it's got the weathering, the antiquing going on. Because of that, like, it is one of the greatest things. It's just never, you're not going to have to do a lot of maintenance on it. Like, it always looks good, kind of thing, I guess. So it's a good kit. It's literally been one of my favorite kits for like ever. Even though it's, you know, kind of no frills, not much going on. I don't think they're that expensive. How much do they cost? Oh, they are, let's see, like a roller ball, $25. I mean, they're not cheap, but I mean, I don't know. Offhand, I don't know what other junior style kits go for, but it's one of my favorites. It's always been one of my favorites because it's, like I said, low maintenance. I always kept pens for myself. Like, I would make it with that kit because I just loved it. Dragon Twist. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Ooh, Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Let's see here. Marquetta's here. Cool. So that's it, guys. So next week we'll be back in action doing a little bit of casting stuff. What is the date? What's going on here? Christmas is upon us, guys. It is upon us. So next Saturday is the 27th. Yeah, so that'll be good. The Saturdays are working out pretty well. So we'll be back in action on the 20th. Let's see, is that right? Yeah, the 27th. And then the 3rd, which also works out pretty well. No weird holidays falling on stuff. So it should be pretty good. Pretty good. So anyway, guys, I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas. Hope everything's safe, especially if you're traveling or driving across town and it's, slippery or anything like that. Just be safe getting there. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful Christmas. I'm looking forward to it as well. Time to get things wrapped up. I got like literally wrapping presents time. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else before anything that I need to tell you before Christmas happens. I don't think so. I think we got everything rolling here and it should be pretty good. So anyway, thanks for joining the fun this week. And thanks for plugging along as we kind of, like I said, this was kind of a random thought in the back of my head. And I'm like, let's see how this goes. Now, fire and ice, you could do a million different things. I don't know. I think I've made cooler looking, blanks before in my, this isn't the coolest thing I've ever made, but I think it's pretty cool and I really like the effects. And so hopefully the doing the resin that's, kind of specific way with different things going on in them, hopefully that helps you guys kind of expand and try some new different things with your casting so that you can get kind of, like I said, it just gives you a little bit of a different look in your blanks than if you just kind of said, okay, I want red. Let me grab a red mica powder. And you don't have to do it every time. That's the thing. I just use one mica powder in most of my blanks. I don't get too crazy with stuff. But it's kind of nice when you're like, hey, I want to do something a little bit different on this. Let's put some different things together. So let's see. Yeah, the bushings. That's why. So cow spit. That's funny. That's one of the things that I like about the juniors. Now there are different. There's like junior 2 and I don't know. There are some different ones, but like generally I don't know. Most of the juniors that are on, like the Turner's website, Turner's Warehouse website, like the Independence, Junior Independence, and Junior George, and Junior, I don't know, Frank and Harry, whatever. There's all these different ones. Generally, they're going to be the same. Just double check to make sure. There are, like I said, there are a couple, for the most part, like the super, if you find a very, very cheap junior kit, that may be a different bushing. There are some that, but it's going to be like it's going to look cheap. It's a cheaper kit. So all the generally nice ones, but then there's also just I don't think it's called junior. I guess it's just gentleman or something. So yeah, in general, most of the juniors are all going to use the same bushings. That's why when I was like making and selling pens, I pretty much stuck with cigars, Sierras, and bolt actions was another one that I did. They just tended to be popular, but and then the juniors. So my juniors were generally going to be the high-end pens. The cigars were kind of the middle of the road, and then the Sierras were cheaper pens. But you have variations of all three of those kits, like so many different platings and options, but they all use the same bushings and drill bits. So it made things a little bit easier than like for every theme you go get, like the dragon kit, and then you got to get bushings and drills and all this stuff, and they work differently. I just kind of simplified things just to make my life a little bit easier. But that's why I like the juniors. They look great, obviously, but there's so many different types of themes and all that kind of stuff, but it's all the same equipment. So makes things easy. So anyway, I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas, and I will see you guys all on the next stream.